everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today I'm excited to be revisiting Uprising: Curse of the Last Emperor from Nemesis Games. This is a game which I covered in the most recent campaign, which as of right now should have its pledge manager open, and if it doesn't, then I'll have details about when it's opening in the pinned comment and video description. But this video will also give you a nice bite-sized video in terms of flowing through a one-chapter play, which is not the norm, because typically when you play a game of Uprising, you're playing 2 chapters or up to 4 for the full experience. Here I'll be doing a chapter 1 play in this game overview and gameplay video to help you give you a feel as to how this game plays, plus also check out 2 factions here that I actually didn't cover from the final version the last time that I did a play, a 2-chapter play actually of Uprising. So you get to see a variation there, and of course we'll see how the gameplay pans out over the course of this chapter 1 play. So without further ado, let's begin in the refresh phase. Way up there in the top left hand corner, you'll see the marker on the chapter track. We're going to follow that all the way down through the scroll to give you an idea as to how Uprising plays. Now you're probably wondering what the overall objective of Uprising: Curse of the Last Empire is. How do you win the game? Well, it all comes down to victory points, which are tracked using these markers on the victory point track, and all of the clans in the game are feverishly trying to accumulate as many victory points as possible. So you have the Imperial Legion in purple at the bottom. That is an AI run clan that is trying to pump its numbers up. You also have the Chaos Horde, which is another enemy clan the AI or the game is actually pumping up as well. So you have both of those clans to contend with, and when you're playing solo like I am right now, I've got 2 clans I'm controlling. The really crazy thing about the game is that all of the players, or all of the clans that you're controlling in the case of a solo player, each individually have to have more VP than the Empire and the Chaos at the end of the last chapter that you're playing. So that is going to keep you on your toes. You cannot just be past one of the 2 enemy factions and get a victory. You need to be past both of them, and every clan that is essentially a friendly clan in this game needs to be ahead of those enemy clans. So you've got your work cut out for you on normal difficulty, and it gets even more extreme as you pump that difficulty up. In terms of difficulty, we are playing on normal difficulty. If you want to know more about the differences between them, on page 9 of the rulebook, they are laid out in full in terms of how it changes up the game. Also, any advanced cards with the skulls on them have been removed, as I did in my 2-chapter play as well. So we very much are playing in a normal level set playing field. Now over here on the chapter track in the top left-hand corner, you'll see me zoomed in here on the refresh phase. I have a marker on this, and it's worth mentioning this is an important phase, especially as you move through the chapter. Not as much at the very beginning of the game, because only a few things can really be done, because, well, not much has actually happened yet. So we'll be skipping over a couple of the steps in here, but a few of them we're definitely doing. The first one here is to reveal a druid card, which we will be doing. Then it states we'd be refreshing cards that are face down, but we don't have any currently face down, so we skip past that. We'd be regaining 8 action points, and of course we started things off with 8, so nothing to do there. But the things we need to do as well would be dealing 3 new items, because we have an item deck that has not been revealed yet, and we also need to reveal 3 new quests for this current chapter. The passing of the first player token is also not going to happen right now. It's been preset to the first clan that I have on my left hand side. So let's walk through each of those 3 steps right now. The druid card that's been revealed is for archery and clash. Ignore all of those skull icons showing on 1 die your enemy rolled before damage once per round. Next, let's reveal 3 item cards off the top of the deck into the shadowed in areas. Now, for the purposes of allowing you guys to see the cards better, I'm going to go ahead and give you a closer up shot of the 3. On each of the item cards in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the requirements that you need to have or to spend in order to obtain them. So in this case, the majority of them, actually all of them, require the payment of salt. One on the far right also has an attribute or skill value that needs to be hit on your hero. So as an example here, one of the clans I'm controlling, Baronth the Wall, is the hero. The attributes or skills along the bottom here, you'll see them all labeled out. The one on the far right, the item that you saw in the previous shot, which had the Flencer, which is a really cool looking card for clashes, requires 2 from might. So this individual would not be able to go after that at this point. I would need to work on boosting that particular skill or attribute. But those items for now are going to sit inside of the market area. Next, we're going to go ahead and draw 3 quests. Here are the 3 quests we have available for chapter number 1. You'll see the requirements of the quest right through the middle there in the bar with the numerical values and the icons. We'll talk more about how that works later on, but you have the success and fail routes down below. And of course, there's potential boosts and attributes you can potentially throw into the equation to hopefully increase your chances of being successful. There is that ability to fail these quests and have things go sideways. You'll see that in action when we go through chapter 1 further. For now, we're done with the refresh phase. Let's move to the event phase. We're now inside the event phase. There are 3 major steps to this phase. The first is to add 2 threat to all legions and horde cards in play. So as of right now, for chapter number 1, we don't have any of these cards in play. They will come off the Imperial Legion deck or off the Chaos Horde deck as you move through gameplay. To help connect the dots, we have a deck here, the Chaos Horde deck. At times within the game, we will draw a card from this deck. It will come in face up. It will also bring with it the standee that matches. That standee will be in play for that enemy clan. And of course, at this step in the event phase is where there would be a little tracker attached to the side of the card that you would slide up, meaning that the actual threat is increasing, which is actually pushing up how many dice it rolls, which makes life really tough on you when you're going up against them. So as of right now, we don't have to worry about that because these haven't entered the fray yet. The next major step of the event phase is to flip over the event chapter to find out what is in store. The last harvest. The freezing cold mercilessly destroys every crop, turning food into an invaluable asset. Every player gains 2 food at this point. As we add more food to the food we already have, we might as well talk about how we got these resources from setup. That's because we're playing on normal difficulty. If you're playing on different difficulty levels, it might impact the amount of resources you have out of the gates. This is food, this is plunder, and this is salt. We're adding 2 to each of the piles of food, 1 for each of the clans I'm controlling. Alright, so the food situation has increased thanks to the Chapter 1 event card. Also worth mentioning, these are feats and they're specific to the hero that you've chosen to control as part of a clan you've chosen to control. So in my case, I look for both cards. There's always 2 at the very beginning during setup that have the start icon, or I should say terminology on them. Those are the 2 you start with. And there are other feats that are in a deck off to the side, which you can eventually go inside of and pull out to boost your overall hero and what it can do and potentially how it can benefit your clan. Now, in terms of the other clan, which you haven't seen me talk about too much, I'll show you the hero that I've chosen. This is the hero for the other clan, which is the Orange clan. Now, there's still more here on the card to resolve. It says, while on the horizon, eerie lights announce the arrival of an even worse threat than hunger. Place 1 horde at threat 4 in the fog grave, not adjacent to a haven. And then place 1 horde at threat 4 in the screaming sea, not adjacent to a haven. So that ended up being a really cool tie-in, as the top card off the Chaos Horde deck was the Coven, which is the same artwork that was on the Chapter 1 event card. So pretty cool. It said it's a threat 4, so we've gone ahead and put the tracker on the row, which is threat 4. I've also got the standee for this individual as well, the Imperial Guard coming from the Imperial Legion set, as well as out with the standee. Now, in terms of which one I drew the Coven first and then the Imperial Guard. Something worth mentioning is there are immediate triggers on both of these cards that need to be resolved the second that they flip upwards. So we're going to take a look at the Coven, resolve that first, and then the Imperial Guard. The Coven is no friend of the clans that I'm currently controlling. Each of them loses 1 unused action point, which gets placed on this card. It even states you do not regain them in the refresh phase. So these things are taken away and kept away until this thing is taken down. So Legion individuals typically are placing their target. In this case, that's exactly what's going to happen. So we need to find out where these individuals are going to be situated on the board, particularly the Imperial Guard, in order to make a rational choice around what is going to happen next in terms of which target we want this Imperial Guard going after. We get a choice of it targeting either of the 2 clans' havens that I control. The only constraint around placing this horde standee is that it cannot be adjacent to a haven, but it needs to be on a fog grave space. The horde has now been placed. Let's move on to the Legion. The constraints around placing the Legion, as mentioned on the Chapter 1 event card, state that it has to be in a Screaming Sea location and it cannot be adjacent to the Haven. So the Haven has 3 hexes which are adjacent to it, so those are not valid placement, but we have 2 further on the left and 1 on the right that's a possibility. I'm going to go ahead and place the Imperial Guard over here, and it needs to now place its target. And in doing so, I'm going to choose its target to be Winterhome, going after the Orange Clan and Ronja. The target is placed on the Haven and the artwork matches the actual Imperial Legion it's attached to. The last piece of the immediate effect on the Imperial Guard card to resolve is at this point we're going to place one garrison on every hex with a garrison. So this Imperial Guard comes in and just immediately starts improving the garrisons across the land for the Imperials, which is pretty awesome for them, pretty bad for me. So 3 of those garrisons that you can see, one of them hiding behind my hero there in blue, all of those are going to go up to level 2. The capital will not be increasing past level 3. The capital can expand past level 4, and the wording and terminology around how that's handled is right on the hex itself. It's worth noting, though, that for the immediate effect for the Imperial Guard, it strictly mentions that its exception is the capital, so that will not be increasing. So the Imperial Guard wastes absolutely no time in bolstering the Imperial Legion across the land. The final step of the event phase is to place one activation token on every Horde and Legion card, and on the last chapter you actually do this twice. Now, because I'm playing technically one chapter play, you would go ahead and probably place 2 on here, but again, this one chapter play is outside of the norm in terms of how you play Uprising in typical fashion of 2 chapters to 4 chapters. So we'll be skipping that and just placing one activation on each of them. And that's going to do it. We are now done the event phase. We're moving on to the build phase. Inside the build phase, the important steps are to draw 2 feats from your feat deck. You get to keep 1. There's a 10 card limit, which we have not hit yet because we're not that far into it. And then we put the other at the bottom of your feat deck. So basically pull 2, take a choice out of the 2, and throw the other one to the bottom. We'll do it for both clans right now. The 2 cards that I pulled off the top of the feat deck for my light blue clan, which is Baronth the Wall, we have Call to Arms, actions. We can flip this to place 1 basic unit on a Haven, or discard this to place 1 unit on a Haven. Both of those sound pretty useful. And the other one here says always, with that sand timer there, if you solve a quest, gain the reward of 1 quest goal, even if you gained it already. That's really good if the quest goals are something you're really going after. Like, for instance, you really might enjoy the fact that you're gaining victory points, or maybe a certain cool effect from solving a quest. That could be really, really good. I ended up going with the Astute feat for Baronth the Wall and that light blue clan. I think that's the best one. It's the quest-based one that you saw moments ago. Over here for the Orange clan, I have 2 feats to choose from. So I have the Slavers one. It says after combat, if you have 1 or more Slavers here and destroyed a legion or garrison, you may place 1 basic unit on any Haven. So basically allowing you, if you still have one of these Slavers around, you're able to bolster a Haven somewhere in the land. Definitely handy. Then Tricky here is an always one, so very handy just right out of the gates because these ones are always cool. And this one says flip this to reroll any of your dice in combat. This can be only used on your hero's hex, so you have to make sure that when you're using it, it is on the location where your hero currently is. I honestly think Tricky might be one of the better ones to grab, I think, out of the gate, so we'll go with that. Alright, the final step of the build phase is to then place any units or walls or towers, basically building any of these that you pay for based on your resources on any of your havens. So you just have to pay the cost listed on your player board itself. So tower defenses, for instance, would be 1 plunder. The wall defenses here would be 1 plunder. And it's also worth mentioning the trade action can actually be used always. You can even do this during the build phase. It's the only action you can do outside of the typical actions phase. Another handy thing to make mention of is this right here. You may always exchange 3 of the same resource for 1 other resource. This costs 0 action points to do it. So that is worth mentioning as well. Very handy to be able to convert resources you have a whole bunch of to get a type of resource you might be struggling to get or find. Let's go over what I'm building for this clan. I'm going to go ahead and spend 1 plunder for a wall defense, which is going to boost up my haven. And then I'm going to go ahead and spend 4 salt to grab 2 spear singers, and then 2 plunder for 1 youngling. So things on my home hex are going to change quite quickly. With this clan finished their build, let's go ahead and resolve the other. I've decided to go ahead and build a wall defense. I'm also going to pick up 1 hunter for any 2 resources, and I've chosen these 2. And then I've got 6 resources here of any type, because it says any 2 here, and that'll allow me to get 3 sellswords. Knowing that we have an Imperial Guard heading there as its target, it's a good idea to throw up some defenses and get some units ready to go. With the build phase now complete for my second clan, we're moving on to the actions phase. So in the actions phase, it's really straightforward on the chapter track, which is listed out, which basically just says, take actions until all players have passed. In this case, I'm controlling 2 clans, so I'll be taking actions back and forth until we're done with the action points we've been allotted. Remember, we originally had 8, but thanks to the Coven coming out, stealing an AP away from both of the factions, we have a little less to work with. Now, the actions columns, of which there are 2, mean different things, and it's really about each action costing 1 of these gems in order to do, or action point. The ones on the left here can be done over and over and over again, and it doesn't finalize or end off your turn. However, as soon as you do one of these actions on the right-hand side, you only have to do 1 of them, and then your turn ends, and it moves over to the next clan, and it kind of ping-pongs back and forth until you have no more AP to spend. So in this case, looking at the game state at the very beginning, you're going to want to start moving to get exploring out into the world. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend 1 here to move, and it says move your hero to an adjacent hex even if it's unexplored, and your hero can cross mountains. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and have Braneth the Wall move adjacent to where the Coven is in that unexplored salt location. So Braneth is now on the unexplored hex, and I want to do another action here on my turn, so I'm going to go ahead and choose to explore. It says if your hero's hex is unexplored, which it is, and has no curse, then flip it and resolve its effects. Now that I've done an explore action, one of the actions on the right-hand side, as soon as I'm done resolving this, it will go over to the other clan that I'm controlling. But first, let's flip over that unexplored tile. Plagued by storms, bathed in dark twilight, black ice is what we've found. This is we're going to gain 3 salt, and plus, if empty, place a skeleton here, which it is, so definitely a skeleton going there. If not, we'd reinforce. We're not going to do that. Place 1 skeleton with other skeletons, so there are a couple other skeletons around the game board. One is just to the south here of the shot. We'll be adding another skeleton in there. And then it's also worth mentioning that skeletons can turn into hordes within the game. That's a whole other dynamic of the game. Once you get up to a quantity of 3 skeletons in one location, then you turn that into a horde, which means it is replaced by a card coming off of the Chaos Horde deck, which makes things even more tough for us. In this situation, the 1 skeleton being placed in the hex we just explored will not be a big deal. The one going in the other locations of the game board will not trigger anything, so we're okay there. And then we place 1 activation token on Legion or Horde card with the fewest tokens. Well, technically both are at 1, so we get to choose which one we actually put that on. So here's a look at the current landscape. Way up north, an extra skeleton added. Way down south, an extra skeleton, and 1 on the hex our heroes on. Now in terms of resolving the rest of the hex that I just explored, I gained a 3 salt as it mentioned. I also chose to place the activation token on the Imperial Guard as both had 1. For Ronja the Wanderer, I'm going to do the exact same thing. As a hero, I'm going to move and then explore. I'm going to actually have my hero head south 1 position. And we'll flip and explore this hex right now. When you explore a hex, you might find one that has impassable terrain connected to it. You'll know it because one of the edges, or more than one of the edges, will have this teeth-like ridge to it. And that's impassable terrain, which you can find out more about in the rulebook. You can strategically use this to kind of create a buffer away from different units inside of the game. For now, I'm going to leave this as is. Currently, this has come up as a caravan passage, and it states, if empty, place 1 skeleton here, so we'll definitely be doing that. If not, we'd reinforce instead. Then we roll the hero die and we gain a salt per skull. And then each other player gains 2 salts. It's actually not a bad one to find. All right, I placed a skeleton in the hex that Ronja is currently standing in, and at this point we're going to roll the hero dice. We take a look at what we get based on the color of the dice and the attributes we have for our character. We have a choice with Guile always as to whether we roll a white or an orange. If you're looking for skulls, you're going to want to roll the orange die because the white one has less of them on it. The odds are lower, so we're going to go ahead and roll and see how much salt we can get per the skeleton icons. All right, we actually did pretty good there. We got 4, so that's not bad at all. So this ends up being pretty good. We end up getting 4 on the right in terms of salt added to the pile of resources, and then on the left, every other player, or clan in this case, gets 2 salt. And just like that, we're all squared away. As I just resolved a right column action with my orange faction, play proceeds now to the blue faction here. I'm going to put an AP or an action point here on command. We pay 1 food, which is going to come from the reserve here that I have of food. And we choose an export hex, which I have my hero on right now by chance, and move any of our adjacent units a maximum of 5 and or the hero there. And units cannot cross those impassable borders. So I've now commanded units into the same area as the skeleton, and that is going to have the Chaos Horde going up against my light blue clan and Baronth the Wall. We now begin a battle as we have opposing units inside the same hex. The first thing you're going to do during combat is check the terrain to see if the terrain type is going to impact the combat coming up. So we are currently on Ice Waste in terms of the same icon that's listed here in the terrain section as to what's on the hex as well. There is no effect when we're on this space, so we don't have to worry about anything regarding terrain. So terrain is not part of the equation here, but we do move into an archery round, and inside of that archery round, I have 2 archers as part of my units in this hex. Both have white dice on the bottom of their standee that you can see. One of them's kind of hidden behind. I've got 2 white dice to represent each of the archers. They get to roll first. In this case, the skeleton doesn't have any archery ability whatsoever, so I'm just going up against the skeleton to see if I can potentially kill the thing off before we even get to the clash round, which would be next. The other thing you want to keep an eye on is your feats. You might have something that can help you. I do actually have a card here for Baronth the Wall, the hero. During the archery and clash round, and we're in archery right now, you may turn 1 of your dice to show a single defensive icon before damage once per combat on your hero's hex. Now, in the archery round, I'm not going to need this, so we'll wait on that. We might need it later, but I'm hoping we can roll and get a hit right here and take this skeleton out. So let's see how we do with the dice. We're looking for a skull icon, and we got one, a skull and a shield. That's enough. That skeleton is out of here. As you can see, way up top left, we got our very first VP for the light blue clan. As we took out one of the skeletons, we received this VP right away, and now our turn is over as we just did a right side or right column action, which was a command action. We're moving over to the orange clan. Rongshot wants to do the exact same thing and is going to go ahead and place one of the action points on command. I've already paid 1 food, bringing the total food down to 2. We are going to now move all the units sitting inside the home hex down south, and we're going to go after that skeleton there. Similar to the prior battle, this hex is also based in Ice Waste, so there is no terrain effects going into this battle as well. We'll take a look at the feats and also see what we have for anything in the archery phase. You can always take a look at the clan board to determine which units are archers or simply just at their artwork alone. So we have basic archers here. I currently have just 1. I actually went ahead and created a whole bunch of sellswords, but only 1 actual archer. And so because of this, I'm only rolling 1 white die. This archery round is less likely to be guaranteed unless I get lucky here and land a skull. Oh, nope, that is a blank. So we are going to be going to the clash round. Clash rounds are really interesting as they go right to the bitter end. Unlike the archery round where it's just 1 attack based on whoever has archery based units available, in the clash round everybody is part of the fight, and in that situation it revolves until there is one side completely demolished into dust. So all the remaining units right now would roll their dice simultaneously. You destroy any units that or threat if you're going after one of the Legion cards or Horde cards, because if you actually make damage against those, the threat tracker starts going down the card. We don't have any of those larger units in this hex right now. It's just a skeleton, so 1 skull would take out a skeleton easily. And we have the ability to modify these by shields and bolts, and then we just do the clash round again and again and again. So I have a decision to make here. I do have a feat card that is an always card, so I could use this right now before I even go into this clash, which allows me to flip this to reroll any of your dice in combat. This can only be used on the hero's hex. So I could use this right now if I wanted to gamble that I could take out this skeleton before we go into clash and maybe potentially lose a unit. I like to prefer to avoid that. I like having a larger group of units together for as long as possible to make as much progress as possible. So even though this might not be the best time to use this card because we're only going for a 1 chapter play here, I'm going to go ahead and make a reroll and hope for the best. And when I say hope for the best, I really mean it, because there's only 2 skulls on this 6-sided die. So the odds are not in my favor, but we'll see how things go. And if they don't go well, we're going to be heading into a clash, and then I'll regret what I just did. So, oh, we got it. So that skeleton is dead. We gain a VP and we avoid potentially some bloodshed on our side. All right, VP has been increased by 1 and we're moving back over to the light blue clan in order to do an action. The action I want to take at this point in time is going to be to create another haven. This is a really good thing to do and something you're going to want to drive towards accomplishing, because when you pay the 2 plunder, and this is something also on the strategy side of things you really want to keep in your back pocket, is you always want to try to have 1 food and 2 plunder available at the end of the build phase when you move into the actions phase, typically as much as you can, because you want to be able to have the ability to pay for the command action and pay for a potential haven placement if you get the opportunity to do so, like I do right now. If I had have already spent all of my plunder or all of my food in the earlier build phase, yes, I'd have a lot of units, but then I wouldn't be able to actually accomplish as many strategic goals going into that round. So be aware of that. But if we pay 2 plunder, which I do have, if there is no curse there and an enemy unit or haven or X in the hero's explored hex, we can now place one of our havens here. And the benefit of that is, as you'll see, resources are going to increase now, and it indicates it right underneath the haven that's just been picked up and built. Havens are also going to generate you VP points as you go through the game, so you're definitely going to want to put as many of these things down and also try to protect them as much as possible. Now, something I allow myself to do retroactively, because again, this is just a chapter 1 play showing you the flow of the game, you're going to want to keep your eye on the feat cards, because some of them, like this one here, states after combat, you can flip this to exchange 1 youngling, which I do have because I created 1 of them, and I actually did it on purpose, but I forgot to actually take advantage of this feat right after I killed the skeleton. So we're going to go ahead and do it right now, a little bit out of order, but I want to show you how cool these feats really can be. We're going to flip this over to exchange the 1 youngling here for 1 Oathsworn, which is going to really ramp things up. So that individual with the blue die at the very front is going to change to an Oathsworn with a red die. A pretty awesome jump, and again, make sure you keep your eyes on your feats for things before combat, during combat, and after combat. Some of those types of feats are very, very powerful. Moving over to the orange faction, they're going to do the exact same thing, because why not? We've cleared out all the enemies there. We might as well go ahead and build a haven, and I kept 2 plunder with them as well to be able to pull that off. So I'm going to go ahead right now and take that 2 plunder, discarding it. It is now gone, and I'm making sure that the plunder on the blue clan has also been removed out of the equation for the haven they created. And it's worth mentioning that you're going to want, as at least a bare minimum, to be attempting to try and place a haven with each of the clans in every chapter. If you can do more than that, that's pretty awesome, but your aim is going to be trying to get at least 1 down every chapter. Some chapters it might not work out for you, but push for that if you can. Just like that, we're back around to the blue clan here. We have 3 action points to spend still. For my next action, I'm going to choose to go into the market and gain an item. I just have to pay its cost. Being that we have enemies on our doorstep of our brand new haven we just placed down, probably going after this war paint wouldn't be a bad idea. During a clash, we can discard it to gain a red die before rolling on our hero's hex. Not a bad one to have right now. When a market card is purchased, a new one comes out in its place. For the orange faction, I'm going to choose to go on a quest. We're going to choose one, roll our hero dice, and try to solve it. So these are the 3 quests that I have to choose from. The thing you want to keep an eye on is at the very bottom of each of the quests, there's an icon that relates back to the hex that you're on. If it matches the terrain type, then you might get a bonus. So for instance, these 2 have to do with marshes. This one here has to do with the woods. I'm actually not on any of those, so it doesn't matter in this case. So I don't get any bonuses across any of them. So that doesn't push me towards one choice over the other. But looking at this one right here, it looks pretty easy, as I only need to solve 1, as it says 1 plus for the solve section, of one of these 3 criteria across this quest. So you can try to land all of them, because that would actually be a real big success, as every one of these ones that you actually do successfully has a small reward underneath of it as well. But overall, the quest needs to be solved by getting at least 1 of these 3. In this case here, you need 2 of these 3. So some quests are tougher than others. So let's go ahead and roll for Ranja, and she's got 2 red dice, 1 blue die, and then I get a choice because I have Guile, which allows me to select either orange or white. Because I'm trying to get as many skulls as possible, I'm going to go with orange. So here is my dice pool, and as for the hero, based on the attributes, we're going to roll to see how we do here. Now I'll take a quick look actually at my feats to see if I have anything that I can add in here. The ones that I have is 1 for clash, which won't help me right now, and the other one is an action. It says flip this to use the command haven or remove action without paying the resources. Not something that's going to apply right here. Could be useful later on when we're doing action point stuff, but for now, we're just going to roll these dice, see how successful we are. Oh my gosh, that was the worst roll I could have ever gotten. And unfortunately for this particular hero, I don't have anything that's going to help me in terms of rerolls here. So I was thinking I would land, well, I mean, there's a chance to land a shield off this. There is the potential in the red ones to also get double skulls. So I really thought, there's even bolts. Like the red ones are good dice. That just didn't pan out for me that time, and so because we fail, it says to discard the quest. So we simply just lose the opportunity to go after this thing. Now, another reason I chose that quest is because failure there wasn't all that bad. Whether you succeed at a quest or whether you actually fail at it, in almost all cases, you're going to remove the quest from the line. So really, that was the best thing that could have happened in terms of a fail result. As you can see, the other two quests that are in here have bad things happening, like potentially Chaos gaining a victory point, which we don't like, or losing a victory point. So yes, and there's also potentially the idea that a quest could sit still too, so they don't always necessarily disappear from the equation as well. Moving back over to the blue clan, I think we'll go ahead and do a quest as well of the remaining two available, see what we can pull off. Now here's the fun part for Braneth the Wall, taking a look at the dice pool for this hero currently, and it is worth mentioning there are cards that come out of the feat deck that literally can be attribute boosters to allow you to have more dice to go against these quests. So it's something you definitely want to focus on as you progress through the game. You might be thinking, well, this dice pool is pretty limited. It doesn't seem like you have much of a chance of success. Well, it's like that out of the gates, but your hero will grow in size and strength as you go through and collect more and more feats. So as of right now, this is the dice pool that I have for the light blue hero, and taking a look at the best possible roll I could probably muster off those dice in order to land two successful criteria being solved here with that roll. That is going to be like a pretty rare opportunity for me to be able to benefit from that particular roll. So I think going for the 2+, even though as much as I'd like to solve much better, the chances are so slim there. I don't like that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one instead. The bonus here is that I do have this feat card here that says always, if you solve a quest, so I have to solve it and just get one of these three criteria, which I have a good shot at because a lot of these blue dice get shields, so should be able to pull that off, and hopefully maybe the skulls too. Then I gain the reward of one quest goal even if you gained it already. So this would allow me to essentially take over another goal off of this card, which allows me, if I get the skulls and I'm really lucky, I'll get 1 VP, and then I can potentially gain it again using this card. So a 2 VP kind of combo, which could be quite nice. So let's go ahead and see whether that pans out the way I hope it will. Cross your fingers, because I'm probably going to need some help here. There we go. We got, oh, actually, well, yeah, we solved it, but we didn't get the 3 we needed to get the VP. We did successfully solve it. So I'm going to take this card, and in combat on a marsh terrain hex, you gain a blue dying clash, which is great. I don't get the VP from here, but if I go ahead and use this card right now, then if you solve a quest, you gain the reward of 1 quest goal, even if you gained it already. So it says even if you gained it already, and I didn't. So regardless, I can still take it. So I'm going to take 1 VP, even though I missed it from the dice. I think my orange clan actually wants to go after that final quest, as I have a pretty good opportunity, seeing as Ranja has 2 for red, which provides potential double skulls or even bolts. So I have, even with less dice, likely a bit of a better chance to be able to pull off maybe a 2 category win or 2 goal win off that quest. All right, this time around for this quest, I'm changing up the dice pool for Ranja that she is going to use instead of using an orange die for Guile, because you can choose between a white or an orange. And again, you want to look at the faces to figure out what you're going after and what you're trying to get off these quests. I'm going to go with a white die instead because the potential to get a shield is there, and I want to boost the chances of that because, hey, I need to get 2 of these goals across this card in order to solve it. So the more opportunity for that, the better. So here we go. Let's see how we do. There's a shield, there's a bolt, and we didn't land the skulls. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be a successful solve because we got 2, which is a solve down here. We get this. We also get 2 VP. That was a fantastic roll and worked out perfect. Now the solve of this quest is the ability to gain any one of our feats from our hero deck for Ronja, which is awesome because I can pick whichever one I want. So I might as well pick one of the ones that boosts her actual character attributes or skills. And that's going to be a card that looks like this, which literally says right now, when you gain this, you gain 3 resources. So first off, I'm going to choose whatever 3 resources I want. Probably going to boost up my plunder, seeing as I've lost all of it building havens, and maybe a little food in there. But then I get a choice. I can either have it this way with magic being +1 or might being +1, and it basically slides underneath of my hero card, and that's going to boost how many dice I have of a particular attribute. There are other cards like this in her deck that affect the other attributes that aren't on the one you just saw, but I like the idea of getting magic because the magic die is purple and gives me the opportunity to get skulls and bolts, and more opportunity on the bolt side of the equation, which is another facet of what she has that she's really not that strong at yet. So I'd like to kind of even her out. Here's how things are looking now. I've got 1 extra food, 2 extra plunder, thanks to grabbing this attribute card, which I then slipped right underneath of her hero card, giving her the +1 as a reminder to her row when she goes and does things like quests, for instance. For my final action point, I'm going to choose to go to the market. Now this is actually a really cool card that came up. That one way in the back is awesome. And I absolutely have the ability to pick this up. It's going to cost 2 salt to do so, and I'm absolutely going to pay for this. I also have to have 1 lead in my attribute, which I do. So I'm able to do this. This architect says as an action, flip this to place 1 tower and 1 wall on any haven. That would have been huge to actually get up in place prior to the end of my actions here. So that's another thing you're going to want to keep an eye on when new items come out into the market. Keep an eye on their abilities, look at your situation, and see whether or not there's something of benefit that you might want to do prior to the end of your actions. Because as of right now, I'm out of actions and won't be able to pull this off in time. Your hero also has a 10 card limit for feats and items, so keep that at the top of your mind as you're collecting feats and items as you continue through the game. You cannot go past 10. For the Orange Clan, I'm also going to go ahead and head to the market to end things off. The one I've chosen to take is this one here, which requires that I have 2 might, which I do have, and I got to pay 4 salt to take it. This is a really expensive one. So during the clash, you can turn 1 of your white dice to show 1 single skull or shield before damage once per combat on your hero's hex. So could come in handy for attacking or defensive purposes. Moving right along to the Nemesis phase, we're going to activate legions and hordes once for each activation token on them in initiative order, lowest to highest. So starting with the lowest initiative, which is the Coven at 9 versus 12 for the Imperial Guard, we're going to go ahead and activate this one, taking off 1 of the activation markers, the only one there. So when we look at activating a Horde, the first thing we're going to do is place 1 curse here. Or Chaos is going to gain 1 victory point if there is already a curse in that hex. Now the Horde is going to move, but not further from the capital. We're going to count the hexes that form a route to the capital if we're not sure. In this case, we're pretty sure it's going to be heading right into the haven because we actually look at adjacent hexes next to the Horde in a priority order that is actually labeled out in the rulebook from A to B. And the first one is going to be the one that triggers, which is into a haven, because adjacent to it is a haven, and Hordes always choose a haven over another hex, and also choose the haven with the fewest units if there's more than 1 choice. So the Coven comes in to the Haven, and at this point we are now going to trigger a battle. So as with every single combat, we take a look at the terrain first. In this case, again, we're in the Ice Waste, which has no effect on battle whatsoever. However, the curse areas, the marshes, the Badlands, the Highlands, the woods, they all have impacts. We just happen to be on one that doesn't have one. Next, we're going to look at the threat level that we currently have for the Coven to determine the dice being rolled as we move into the archery phase. So the first thing is archery, and the archery logo's right there next to the tracker, and it shows 2 orange dice. That is what is being thrown at us from the Coven, so we have to find out what we're throwing back at it archery wise. So the dice pool consists of 2 white dice thanks to my 2 archers, and 2 orange dice for the Coven. And of course we're going to go ahead and parse through the results based on skulls for damage and shields for blocking things. So let's go ahead and see how this goes. I also have feat cards I can potentially throw in the mix when I choose to. Okay, so that resolved that archery in an absolute nil result. Absolutely a moot point. Nothing happened in the archery phase, but now we move to the clash. Heading into this clash, we have a whole bunch of dice coming our way from the Coven. We have a purple, 3 blue, and a white, so that's going to be a lot of fun to handle. And then we've got 2 white dice for each of the archers. We have a red one here for the Oathsworn, which was one of the characters that I boosted up. Remember, originally it was much smaller. It was a youngling. And we also are going to go ahead and use this for clash round only, and it shows the clash icon on to remind you. Discard this to gain 1 red die. We're going to do this before rolling on your hero's hex. We're doing that right now. So that card is discarded. So that gives a red die to my pool, which makes me a little bit more comfortable about this roll, but still not overly. So let's go ahead and roll these. I'll roll them at the same time, but I'll keep them in groups by themselves so we can kind of parse through all the results. So here comes the damage from the Coven first. Oh, that's actually a really good roll. I'm okay with that. Just 2 to deal with. Maybe we'll get enough shields to even block this. And I actually have a card that I can use feat-wise in the clash or archery phase to convert a white die to a shield. So if I need to do some blocking, I can actually pull that off potentially. Oh, what a crazy result. That is awesome. Okay, so we got ourselves 3 skulls. The bolt, that's also really good because the bolt can actually trigger off of the druid power. We have a shield already. That could not have been a better roll. Okay, so we're going to take this feat card here, and I'm going to use this. It says you may turn 1 of your dice to show a single defense. You can do this before damage, once per combat on your hero's hex. So we're going to literally just rotate this over to a shield symbol, and boom, we have now blocked both damage. So all of this is just gone away. This is what we're resolving here in terms of what's coming at the Coven. Now, unfortunately, we are inside of chapter number 1 only, so there's only 1 druid card revealed so far that can use the bolt, and it currently can be used in the archery or the clash phase, but it's only for ignoring shields showing 1 die of your enemies, but the enemy didn't roll any shields, so that's not going to help us. But guess what does? 3 damage going through, which is really going to hammer down the overall threat of the Coven in a massive blow. So not only did I not take any damage on any units, but I also just knocked the threat level of the Coven from 4 down to 1. And at this point, we continue with our clash, and the Coven this time, going into the next clash rounds, only getting a purple and a white die, making me feel a lot better. All right, let's see how this roll goes. We got the purple and white die first. We'll see what we get. A skull and a shield. Let's see if we can do a little bit better than that. Come on. Oh, 2 skulls. That is perfect. Now, it's worth mentioning that the card I used prior in order to get a shield, I can't use this again right now because it's once per combat. And we're in the same combat. We're inside of a clash within that combat that is endless until someone is taken out fully. So unfortunately, I can't defend against the hit that's coming to me. But even better is the Coven cannot stop all the damage I've got throwing at it. One of it gets through the health of the Coven, which is enough to knock it out completely. Not a bad battle at all. We were able to protect our haven, not lose a lot of units, just 1 archer, and take down a pretty decent enemy. The best part of taking down one of the enemies, if we take a look at the very bottom of the card, it says a fading memory. If destroyed, gain 4 VP. Then every player gains their action back. So that action point that Coven took from us, from each of the clans at the beginning of the game, have now been returned back. Of course, I can't use them because we're not inside the actions phase anymore, but in the following chapter, even though I'm not going to it, but if you were to continue this play on your own, for instance, you would have those action points back now at full allotment, and you'd have the full 8. So the quests, on top of taking down the actual Legion cards or the Horde cards and their standees, definitely generates quite a bit of VP if you can focus on those things. And as always, if you can really bump up your resources by building havens and sprawling across the land and exploring and checking things out, taking out skeletons and curses in the lot, you are definitely, in garrisons as well, for the Imperials, you are going to start racking up VP at an aggressive rate. So continuing along in the Nemesis phase, the next individual to activate is going to actually activate twice, and it's going to be the Imperial Guard. Now this, my friends, is actually quite embarrassing, but I did mention this at the very beginning of the video because I made a goof, and I set myself up with a Horde character on the board, and instead of another Horde character, I went ahead and grabbed an Imperial Legion individual, which was the Imperial Guard, and set them up. And again, we're going to have to take that Imperial Guard out of the equation, and this really shouldn't have much of a game impact because nothing has interacted with that Imperial Guard. It is so far out in the middle of nowhere currently that it is not going to have have a major gameplay impact. There was one targeting token that was placed on the Orange Haven's home hex. We're going to take that away as well, and we're simply just going to draw a new Chaos Horde individual to come out, and we'll activate them like they would have had 2 activations. So I need to retroactively take away the only major gameplay impact that the Imperial Guard had, which was the immediate effect that it came in with at the very beginning when we actually resolved that event card. And that was the effect had us place a garrison on every hex with a garrison except for the capital. So all these garrisons are dropping down by 1, except for the capital. And just like that, the Imperial Guard never existed. What shows up in its space from the Chaos Horde is the Bloodworm. And it comes in at threat level 4, which is really nasty, but we had to resolve its immediate effect here, which is to place 1 curse on any hex with no X. In this situation, we'll go ahead and place this just to the left of our home hex. So I do apologize for that goof, and I talked throughout the entire video like that Imperial Guard was supposed to be present, only realizing just now when about to activate the Imperial Guard that I was supposed to, as the very first thing an Imperial Guard normally does is drop a garrison, but garrisons don't drop in the middle of nowhere. So that's when I knew I had done something incorrect and have now retroactively corrected that. And we're going to go ahead and activate the Bloodworm and see what kind of nastiness is coming our way. The Bloodworm is going to drop a curse here, or if can't, it's going to gain 1 VP if there's already 1. So we drop the curse, and then we're going to move the Horde 1 hex. This is where we go back to the criteria. Now the other Horde was able to just move into a Haven, which is the first criteria. There is no Haven adjacent to this one, so we need to look to the next step, which is into a hex with enemy units, but there isn't one of those either. If none of those apply, then they go into an empty hex, and you need to remember that a hex with a curse or a skeleton is not considered empty. And then the final criteria is any hex not further from the capital, counting the hexes that form a route to the capital if you're not 100% sure. So moving to an empty hex that's not further from the capital, we're going to move over to another Screaming Sea space, and we activate again. So at this point, we're going to get rid of the activation marker off it. Another curse is going to land and more movement. And what I'm doing by this is bringing it into the area where we're going to be able to have a battle in a future chapter against it. It's not going to be able to make it to me during this time frame, but it is dropping curses as it goes, which is certainly helping out its cause. We now head to the production phase where we're gaining resources based on the total havens that we have out in play. So we take a look at our player boards to determine this. So based on what's on the board here, we get 1 salt, 4 plunder, and 1 food. Now we gain bonus resources for any hexes with a haven on it. So our home hex here still has our haven, so we get 1 of each resource, and then over here we get 2 salt on top of it. And this really helps you understand how important it is to get havens out in play, as you're really going to start generating more and more resources. Over here on the other clan, a different breakdown of resources. You're going to get 2 from each resource type. And then way up on their home hex, they also get 1 of each resource type. The hex they also have an additional haven on gives them 2 more salt on top of it. And just like that, the production phase is over. We now move to the scoring phase. The Empire scores first and scores 1 VP for every hex with any number of garrisons. So in other words, it doesn't matter how many tiers up that garrison is, so long as the hex has a garrison in it, that is 1 VP. So there are 4 hexes currently with a garrison in it, so that's 4 points right there. Then 1 VP for every legion in play. As of right now, there are none because I corrected my error. So still just 4 VP right there. And then 2 VP for every faction in the Imperial Graveyard. And actually, there isn't anybody in their Imperial Graveyard because they didn't kill anybody. They were never on the map to do so. So nothing there. So just 4 points. Now the Chaos Horde is going to activate. This is the one that's really going to generate a ton of points this round thanks to the Chapter 1 event card that really pushed a lot of these Horde cards out the gate, which really gets the curses going. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 curses out on the game board right now. So that's 6 VP right there. Then for every Horde in play, 1 VP. So there's only 1. Thankfully, we killed off one of the other ones. The Bloodworm's still in play, so that's an extra 1. So 7 VP. And then 2 VP for every faction in the Chaos Graveyard. And during the battle with the previous Chaos Horde individual, I did lose 1 of my archer units, which is in the graveyard. So that counts as a clan inside the graveyard. So that's 2 more VP on top of it. That was by far the single biggest jump inside of this play. It jumped all the way up from 0 to 9 points in one gigantic leap. We now move to the players who are going to score. And of course, you also at this point would return any of the clans inside the graveyards back to the player boards. So those that archer that I lost essentially into the Chaos Graveyard comes out now and goes back to my area so I can potentially build it in the future. We now move to players scoring. So at this point, how that works is 2 VP for each of the havens in play. We know both of our clans have a haven out, so 4 points apiece for each clan. Then we also get a VP for the special hexes that we have. So currently we only have the home hex that's a special one right now that generates us some VP, so that's 1 extra. So 5 is basically what each clan is getting at this point. And then 1 more to any player per 5 resources paid. Now, this is an interesting one. You can go ahead and spend, any player can go ahead and spend 5 resources to convert essentially into VP. And this sounds like an enticing idea to do, maybe early in the game, but I highly recommend that you don't do this until the tail end of the game. Generate a whole bunch of resources, stockpile them up, but you're going to want to keep them going into every chapter because you're going to need to build things. So don't burn them all in the points area, just trying to bump up 1 or 2 extra VP to try to catch up to the enemy. That's not the most effective way to do it. Wait until the tail end of the chapters you're playing and then start punching that ticket and seeing if you can scooch ahead in that way. So for right now, even though I do have a bunch of resources, I'm not going to spend anything further. So this is a great example of what I mean. You look at the score track and you go, okay, so right now we have the light blue clan that's out in front, but the Chaos Horde is just behind. And then our orange clan wasn't able to actually even meet or exceed the Chaos Horde. So maybe we should throw some of our resources away to get that extra point or 2. Don't get baited into that early in the game. Maybe get baited into that later in the game, but those are the moments you do not want to be burning 5 resources. You really need that in order to start generating more armies to continue the fight towards gaining more VP in ways that are much more effective throughout the game. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up this game overview and gameplay video for Uprising Curse of the Last Emperor. I had a blast going through this with you guys for one chapter. At this point, as you know from my refresh phase review at the very beginning of the game here, we didn't do all the steps, but at this point, when you wrap back around to the next chapter, you're going to start going through that refresh phase step by step, which is going to have a lot more steps that actually make a lot more sense at this point. Refreshing your AP pool, flipping over your cards, you're going to be refreshing the quest area, you're going to be getting your items all set up and basically getting ready to go. So you'll be fully doing the refresh phase, unlike what I did in the first chapter, which is about half of that. The other thing I want to mention is just an apology around actually spawning that Imperial Guard when it should have been a Horde. Thankfully, I was able to catch that later in the play and then retroactively change things. It didn't have a major gameplay impact. And hopefully this really helps you get a great feel as to how Uprising plays if you're on the fence still. If you're looking at this one wondering whether or not this is a great solo game, the balancing of this game is extremely well done, and you're going to find it to be a challenge even on normal difficulty when you first start out. But it has so many other levels that you can start bumping up and you can start adding in advanced cards to really push the difficulty up. And it's going to challenge you as a solo player. You're not going to be able to whiz through this thing and just destroy it. It's going to throw all kinds of wonderful wrenches at you, but it also is a very smooth operating flow and process throughout the gameplay. And that's something I really enjoyed about playing through the prototype and now here in the final version actually multiple times on the channel. So thank you guys for joining me. Really appreciate it. Check out the video description and pinned comment for the link to the pledge manager or the area talking about it. Thanks again, and as always, keep on rolling solo.